20 years ago, actually, 20 years ago today, we were finishing this same journey, and 20 years and 13 days ago, Teresa and I met literally at the put-in of the Tachancini, a place called Dalton Post. And by this point on the trip, we had fallen madly in love and were talking around the idea of spending our lives together and what it might look like.
It looks like I fell in love with an adventurer. Being an adventurer myself, it took me a long time to find a person to spend my life with, and since I met Dixon, we've been on many, many adventures. I always knew I wanted a family, and when Dixon and I met, it was one of the questions that I posed to him. He thought for about 1.5 seconds and said, yeah. And we have, as a couple, put the needs of our kids as a high priority in our life.
Basically, we had kids so we could spend time with them. You know, and here we are. We've got Trinity, who just graduated high school, and Noah's 14, and we've been waiting 20 years to come back here and share this with them. One thing very early on that we adopted as a core value was the idea that any ministry we do would be glue in our family rather than something that takes us apart from one another. It's something that draws us together. And we've really prioritized being able to do stuff where we get to do it together as a family. So our very first ever missions experience was the four of us together. Shortly after we learned that Noah was born with Down syndrome, we didn't know anything. We were just clueless. We read a bunch of stuff, talked to people, and the one thing that really jumped out at me was a simple phrase buried in a book that said, "Down syndrome will not be the most interesting thing about your child." And that's really guided us for how we've parented Noah. It's a reality, and there are things that are more challenging for him than they are for other people. There's stuff that that he finds really hard. We don't at all try to hide that, but at the same time, it's not the most interesting thing about him. Most days, I don't have the thought, "Oh, Noah has Down syndrome." Some weeks I don't even have that thought.
We didn't want him to know himself as somebody, as that's his identity. We don't want to deny it either, but we don't go around telling Noah, "Wow, that's what you are," or what you have. Instead, we've just continued to live our life the way we live our life. I have memories of Dixon carrying Noah on his back at 15,000 feet when he was little.
He wasn't that little.
He wasn't that little, but it was the downpour of rain. They both have hats on, and Dixon was carrying Noah on his back just to be able to do a hike that maybe Noah wouldn't have been able to keep up with at that age. We do consider both of our kids when we decide where we're going, and we always pray with the kids about it, count the cost with them. But if God's saying yes to it, we say yes to it. I think we started consciously saying yes to God when we both were living in Redding and going to Bethel Church. It was kind of like a mission statement: hear from God and do what He says, just because we trust Him so much that we know if we hear from Him and do what He says, that's the best possible thing that could happen in our lives.
It may sound a bit different for some folks, but I've realized for me, wisdom is a fallback position. Wisdom is a place that I fall back to when we don't have the clear invitation or the clear word of the Lord. And when we have that clear invitation or that clear word, it doesn't have to look like it makes sense, and it doesn't have to look like, "Oh yeah, I see how this is going to work," or even why this could be happening. It's just like, we've got it, we go with it. Not always easy, but pretty simple.
God's made it clear that we're going to Kona and that we're going to do a 6-month training in Kona, a discipleship training school. We love pouring into missionaries. We love going to other countries and doing equipping and pouring into missionaries. I love doing inner healing work with them because really they're on the front lines, but without a lot of support a lot of times. And we feel like there's no lack of opportunity to do something like that at YWAM.
For the last, 6 years or so, other than some disaster relief work, that's pretty much been the focus of our short-term travel. Has all been going with this specific idea of we're going to minister to missionaries, we're going to love on them, we're going to serve them. You know, this next step, going to Kona and doing a DTS with YWAM, it feels like the beginning of that becoming the quote-unquote professional focus of our lives, where we're going to be focused on pouring into missionaries as our primary, you know, vocation or activity or ministry or whatever you want to call it. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it. Whatever God's inviting you into, whatever He's stirring in your heart, saying yes to it is totally worth it. And no, it's not always easy, but it can be very, very simple. And we like living a very, very simple life.